Spoiler warning, we'll be discussing this week's The Book of Boba Fett episode in full detail, and it's an episode that you don't want to miss. Let's go. I wasn't sure The Book of Boba Fett could get any better with expanding the Star Wars universe, but here we are with Chapter 6. Not only are we shown Cobb Vanth, aka the Marshal of Mos Pelga, who was first introduced in The Mandalorian Season 2, but we've got even more connectivity which may line up with future Star Wars projects that are coming down the pipeline. Yes, of course I am talking about Jedi Master Luke Skywalker's appearance and the Jedi Temple. If we connect the dots, we're seeing Skywalker build his Jedi Order on this secret location, which the Mandalorian does the location of. Here Grogu is being taught by Luke to master the Force and learn the ways of the Jedi before him. Perhaps this links with the Tales of the Jedi series that is eventually being rumoured to eventually come around. Even more evidence was for this last year. Greetings my young Padawans, my name is Captain Jack and welcome to Star Wars Now. Chapter 6, which is written by Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, works very well as another establishment episode, not only establishing the current foundations of certain characters, but also setting up more of the incoming Pike Syndicate war based on Tatooine. Fun little fact, Dave Filoni directed this episode, which makes total sense given some of his personal favourite characters are present in the episode itself. The title of Chapter 6 is From a Desert Comes a Stranger, which of course makes a reference to a certain someone who we'll talk about later on in this review. You all know who I mean. As usual, before we do jump into the video, use the Force and hit that subscribe and like button to never miss a video for myself and the team here at Star Wars Now. As always, if you're talking about Star Wars, then we want to hear it, especially right now. I mean, come on, there's enough to talk about. Get commenting, come on now. The opening part of Chapter 6 introduces us to Cobb Vanth, once again. The Marshal is his own way of dealing with the Pike Syndicate, basically telling them to get lost and make a choice. It's a harsh reality, but I love the way he effectively deals with the problem of the Pikes on his land. But let's be honest, this isn't the end of the situation at hand, and we'll talk about that later on in this review. You all know where I'm going with it. Of course, we need to talk about the big character in this episode, Luke Skywalker. He's someone I did not expect to appear in the Book of Boba Fett. We're seeing Skywalker build his future Jedi Temple on this mysterious planet, which is likely the exact same Jedi Temple that was destroyed by Skywalker's student, Ben Solo, aka Kylo Ren. This is of course seen in Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Of course, the appearance of Grogu was hinted at during last week's Chapter 5, when the Mandalorian makes a mention of wanting to visit a little friend. Also the creation of a Foundling armor, which was made for him. Mando wants to deliver this, but is given a lesson in attachment and understanding by an old friend. If you thought like myself getting Luke Skywalker was not enough, then who would have seen the appearance of Ahsoka Tano in the series? Not me, that's for sure. Tano gives Mando an understanding of attachment, but while Din Djarin is attached to Grogu, and Grogu is obviously attached to the man who cared for him, attachment is not something the Jedi can have. A core lesson apart from the Jedi Order's teachings. Ahsoka does reveal to Skywalker that the Mandalorian and Grogu have a strong bond, something that is probably obvious to him. The pair do discuss Grogu and the Mandalorian, and question whether his heart is in it. For Grogu becoming a Jedi, that is. I'll be honest, I was a little emotional at the thought of Ahsoka commenting on Skywalker being so much like his father, her former master. I feel like we need more of Skywalker and Ahsoka, so we can learn more about each other and how they met in the current Star Wars time frame. Part of me thinks that Ahsoka may have kept tabs on him the whole time, or they simply ran across each other and the connection was made. As we originally predicted thanks to conversations online, Cad Bane has finally made his live action appearance in the Star Wars universe via the Book of Boba Fett. In a typical Western standoff between Western characters, Vanth meets Cad Bane in the streets of Mos Pelga, which is now known as Freetown. The standoff results in Bane gunning down both Cobb Vanth as well as his gun-happy Deputy Marshal. I'm not convinced Vanth is actually dead, as his people run to offer him aid, with one applying medical equipment to him. The Deputy on the other hand, yeah, he's 100% dead. Hopefully. He's a bit of an ass. Bane's appearance in live action makes a fantastic moment for Star Wars and Dave Filoni. Cad Bane is arguably the Western style bounty hunter, so having finally make his live action Star Wars appearance is fantastic. I will say I expect him to look a little different, but we need to remember that he has aged, obviously, since the last time we saw him during the Bad Batch, which takes place after Order 66. So quite some time ago. It's likely that Bane is working for the Pike Syndicate, as he mentions them as the Syndicate, and also the spice trade, but myself being myself feels this needs to mention the idea of Crimson Dawn once again. Yes, this would be the organisation that once worked with the Pikes, and who I think is secretly pulling the strings all along right now. It would certainly relate back to Solo: A Star Wars Story, and explain the Crimson Dawn theme in the opening theme to the Book of Boba Fett. It will remain to be seen, but this is not the last time we've seen Cad Bane. He'll appear again and likely have a larger standoff with Boba Fett himself, given Jango Fett trained Cad Bane, and Bane briefly trained Fett himself. This standoff between the two legendary bounty hunters will be one to talk about for sure. Let's see if it happens in Chapter 7. Speaking about Order 66, we of course get the incredible flashback scene of Order 66 taking place at the Jedi Temple. Grogu, as we know thanks to Ahsoka and The Mandalorian Season 2, was present at the temple during Order 66 but did manage to escape, thanks to someone else. This flashback scene is one of those I think will eventually be expanded. The question of who took Grogu from the temple still needs to be explained. Like, how did he escape, and most importantly, who actually helped him, and where are they now? Larger questions still exist around this character, which tells us that we're not finished with him just yet. I mean, it was totally fantastic to see clone troopers of the 501st Legion gunning down— wait, no. It was fantastic to see them once again, even though we were gunning down Jedi who were protecting Grogu, it seems. Whether these Jedi were specifically tasked with protecting Grogu, or rather other youngling children, remains to be seen. Now, I have to commend the VFX artists for the Book of Boba Fett. It was fantastic to bring this Force vision to life, and the animation of the clone troopers and the Jedi was just simply fantastic. Let's talk about the present day. As if this episode couldn't play on your emotions and nostalgia enough, we get another moment that generally caught me off guard. This will be the destruction of a sanctuary cantina. The Pikes, or a pair of them, pay Garsa Fwip a visit via her place of business, and seemingly leave behind some of their belongings, but it's actually a bomb, taking out the cantina and destroying the location. Whether Garsa Fwip is truly dead, as this is Star Wars after all, remains to be seen. Right now, it's unclear, but taking out the sanctuary makes sense. It's a place of business, and Fwip has pledged her allegiance to Fett, making her an enemy in the eyes of the Pike Syndicate. I can only say one and one thing only: if they've killed off Max Rebo, I'll riot. He'll never get to the gig. Anyway, Boba Fett's comment appears to be ramping up the mission on taking on the Pikes. As Fennec Shand points out, they've got enough experienced leaders right now to enforce the area around Mos Espa, but they still lack manpower and actual foot soldiers. While this leads the Mandalorian to Mos Pelga, aka Freetown, it does not solve the problem, especially after he left to return to Fett. Something tells me that Fett may need to look elsewhere for his foot soldiers. Perhaps to a clone army. That, or he could just release his Rancor onto the streets and set it loose on the Pikes as well. I mean, come on, it's a solution. Some closing thoughts on Chapter 6. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have outdone themselves on the storytelling of the Star Wars universe once again. Making use of characters like Cad Bane to show off that a Pikes mean business is fantastic, and really shows the hostile environment the show takes place in, as well as the nitty-gritty details. A common complaint is the fact the show is called The Book of Boba Fett, yet we're currently not spending that much time with the actual character of Boba Fett. While yes, this is a little bit of a concern, I see the story more as an actual book. A book has chapters, therefore different chapters are spent with different characters, establishing their story so they can fit into the main story. Grogu's storyline connects heavily with Din Djarin's, therefore it needs more reinforcement and some conclusion to it in a sense. As an addition, this also has to work with Luke Skywalker's story, but we can't throw in Ahsoka for the sake of it, and no one's going to complain really. Essentially, I feel that this week and last week's episode of the series are being used to firmly establish the current placement of the Star Wars universe. All these characters are much loved by the Star Wars fandom, and many have their own shows and content coming up, including The Mandalorian Season 3 and the Ahsoka spin-off show, which we know is coming down the pipeline sometime soon. Can we also take a moment to say that Luke Skywalker looks fantastic in this episode? Originally his appearance was criticised for looking a little rough in The Mandalorian, but here the de-aging process of Mark Hamill seems to have worked even better than before, and he looks fantastic. Now overall, I give this episode a strong 9 out of 10. It's not perfect, but bloody damn fine, if I might say so. Now I'm super excited for the rest of the Book of Boba Fett has in store for us here in the Star Wars universe. We've got one chapter left, and I'm not sure if a Season 2 is in the pipeline. Of course, we will be discussing the latest episode in the Star Wars Now podcast right here on the YouTube channel. Keep an eye out for more videos as well, as we've got plenty to discuss before next week's ending episode. Alright Exalted Ones, that's it for myself. Do let us know your thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett, Luke Skywalker, Grogu, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka Tano, and everything else that was featured in Chapter 6, as it was chock-a-block full of ultimate Star Wars epicness, if I do say so myself. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button to keep up to date with all the latest Star Wars news, lore, and more. You can follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Wars universe as well. As always, make sure to let us know what you think in the video comment section below, because if you're talking about Star Wars, then we want to hear about it. For now, I've been Captain Jack here on Star Wars Now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you very soon. May the Force be with you.